Hello everybody and welcome back to my YouTube channel for another Procreate tutorial. This week we're going to be exploring the first in a two-part series where we look at creating seamless patterns and custom brushes within Procreate. So today I'm going to show you how to make a seamless pattern. A seamless pattern is a pattern piece that no matter how much you resize it or copy and paste it across a space, it should click together or piece together without any joints or apparent edges or gaps in the pattern. As you can see with this pattern that I created before, once I resize those pieces and place them beside each other, they join together seamlessly and you can't actually see that that's four different pieces creating that pattern. Today I'm going to show you how to make your own seamless pattern from start to finish, and then next week I'm going to show you how you can change or turn that seamless pattern into a custom brush within the Procreate settings so that you can have your own brush to add patterns to objects or other illustrations that you've created, or even bigger or smaller canvases, without having to do a lot of copying and pasting and resizing of your pattern pieces. So as always, the first step is to create a new empty canvas. For pattern, a square canvas obviously works better because once it comes to connecting those edges, it makes the seamless side of this so much easier. Also, when it comes to creating custom brushes within Procreate, the space we have for the shape and texture is actually a square. So if we want this to work as a Procreate brush, we need to create it on a square canvas. So I'm going to start by sketching out my pattern design on a base layer before I go in with my inking. So let's get started. So the next step is something you've seen me do many times before. Once I'm happy with my base sketch layer, I'm going to reduce the opacity of it slightly, and then I'm going to add a new layer on top for inking for my line art. Today I'm using a monoline brush for my line art so that I keep all of the lines of my pieces uniform and the same size, and the pressure that I use on the brush isn't going to change the thickness of the line. This is going to help with keeping the bigger objects in the pattern uniform to the smaller objects, so that once I resize this and paste it across a bigger space, all of the pieces are still going to look uniform and part of one pattern. So it's pretty simple. All I'm going to do is go back over all of those objects that I sketched in the layer below with my monoline brush until I'm happy with my line art. Okay, now that I'm happy with my line art, I'm going to go ahead and delete that sketch layer. And now the seamless pattern creating happens. I'm going to create a new layer and flood it with black, then reduce the opacity down to 50%. Then I'm going to combine those two layers into one group and duplicate them. Now I'm going to get out my moving tool and I'm going to turn on my magnetics, which clips the pieces to align. I'm going to move one of the layers up, and then I'm going to go ahead and select the other one and move it down. So that's the group of layers. So what happens here is where the two layers are overlapping, we can see a darker black. This is going to help us get our seams absolutely flawless. So I'm going to select on the moving tool again, and I'm just going to tap underneath it to move it down much slower because I don't want to take it too far. I'm going to keep doing that until I don't have any overlap. Okay, now that I have no overlap left, I'm going to go back into my layers and I'm going to take out those two halves of this pattern and move them out of the groups. I'm going to merge them together into one layer again and delete those extra black pieces that I created. Now I'm going to repeat the whole process over again, except for this time I'm going to be shifting the pattern from left to right so that we also get our side seam lines flawless as well. So now all the edges of this pattern are seamless, which means once we copy and paste it and click it together, it should create one seamless pattern. But if you look at the middle of this pattern where we've now shifted things left and right and up and down, we're left with a few gaps in the pattern from our original illustration. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use my selection tool to take out pieces of the pattern, little stars, little hearts, and fill those empty spaces. You can do this for any of the parts of the pattern in the middle. Just so long as nothing that you add in goes near to the edges, you won't have to repeat that process of moving and overlapping things. If you do need to add things to the very edge of your illustration, I recommend you go back and repeat those last two steps so that your pattern really ends up being flawless. And as I said, that when you copy and paste it across a bigger space, it's not obvious where those little pattern pieces are. Okay, now I'm 100% happy with my pattern piece. I'm going to go ahead and rename this one Pattern 1 because what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a more reduced size version of this pattern. So I'm going to duplicate it and then turn off the base layer and then duplicate it 3 more times. So I have 4 pieces of the same pattern plus the original because I don't want to erase it. Then I'm going to use the resizing tool with the magnetic still turned on so that it kind of clicks into place. And I'm going to resize those 4 pieces down so they fit the 4 corners of the canvas. And then as you can see, what's happened is the 4 pieces of my pattern have merged together seamlessly to create exactly the same pattern again, just in a reduced size. So I'm going to name that one Pattern 2. And there you go. That's how you create a seamless pattern using Procreate. I hope that you found this tutorial useful, and if you did, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any future tutorials. And I will be back next week to show you how to turn this pattern into a custom brush.